everyone. Welcome to the Copyblogger Podcast. My name is Tim Stoddard. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I have my co-host, Ethan Brooks, with me. Ethan, how are you?
What's going on, man? I'm doing good. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. Today, we're talking about how to grow an email list if you have money, if you want to get paid subscribers. And this is really great to talk about because sometimes I find myself too gung-ho on taking the long route and being patient and doing the content marketing route. I think it's just because I believe in it so much, but I don't ever want to sway people away from spending money to build an email list. It's a perfectly viable option. And also, like, it's important to know how to do it. So let's just imagine that you got some funding or you had an investor, right? Like being confident in actually using that money and allocating it for growth is really, really important. Like investors don't want their money just sitting in the bank account. They want you to put that money to work for growth. So I am definitely an advocate for generating email subscribers and growing a brand with advertising. I've done it in a few instances and had enough success with it to be dangerous at it. But at the same time, I'm really looking forward to going through some of these case studies that you and I have built up today so that we can see like how some people have had massive success with it. All right. So I'm going to jump off with an example I have, but we even talked about this last week, and I'm going to share my screen. The first person I thought of was Noah Kagan. I've been following Noah for a while, and he was on this podcast, and he's just had over and over again a ton of success with growing email lists, and especially through advertising. And so I knew that when he started AppSumo, he had a lot of growth really, really fast through paid ads. And he had such a really, really unique way to do it. And I thought this was so cool because when we say paid advertising, what's everybody think, right? Instagram ads, Facebook ads, send it to a landing page, collect some subscribers, and whatever, keep going with the same routine over and over again. But Noah, being kind of like the contrarian thinking that he is, he did all of this through giveaways. He didn't actually just send traffic to landing pages. He made people sign up to Andrew Chen's website always has this thing going on. It's so annoying, right? It's so annoying.
The email capture?
Yeah, but it comes on every 5 seconds or 10 seconds and you can't get rid of it. All right, so anyway, Noah Kagan wrote about how he grew AppSumo to 150 email subscribers in like 18 months. I think he did something like that. And he guest posted it on Andrew Chen's website. And we'll link it here. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a pretty lengthy article, but he had some really cool things. So, all right. What the heck is a giveaway? Good question. A giveaway is giving away some physical, digital item or service to people in exchange for a visitor signing up for your newsletter. At AppSumo, we further incentivize those customers with getting additional entries by referring friends via Facebook, Twitter, or sharing an incentivized link however they please. That second part is also really cool because I think that whole idea of what are they calling it? Like it's what Morning Brew did, the referral program. Yeah, thank you. That's getting a lot of traction as well. Here's a recent giveaway we are running for AppSumo. A tool we are using is King Sumo giveaways that we released to the public a month ago. For this giveaway, we generally see the initial users in hoping it goes viral. First, I'll tweet or email a few people who I think will be interested. And I thought that was really interesting because it doesn't just send it out to the whole entire email list right away. He gives it out to a few people. Then people will see that and enter the giveaway. Afterwards, they're incentivized to share. So this is really the trick. Like you have to give it to a few key people so that they share the giveaway, because in a way, other people sharing it and the social proof is even more important than just saying like, here, everybody, here's a giveaway, because you're sending a giveaway to people that are already on your email list, right? Like you don't need them to sign up again. You need new people. The timer encourages urgency so people are incentivized to share sooner. Then we've optimized which buttons to show and where so people we'll share the giveaway so that we can get even more people to join. All right. And then he just goes over some results and how many subscribers he got. And more importantly, he goes how many of those subscribers turned into paying customers for AppSumo and basically like what the ROI on this was. But I thought this idea was so cool because it's something that is different. And I read on Josh Spector's email this morning. Actually, I think Josh left a comment to something that you tweeted a while ago, and it was on my bookmark or something. And he wrote an article about don't give away more, be different. And when I was reading this, and then right afterwards, I saw Josh's article, I thought to myself, oh, that's why this giveaway thing is so intriguing to people, because it's not the same old more of, let me serve you ads, say like I have a free ebook for you to download if you sign up. It's like a giveaway contest that people share amongst themselves. And in reality, like if you do it right, and if you get the right people to share it, you don't actually have to send ads to the giveaway. You could if you wanted to. But in reality, the money that you're spending, because this is about paid subscribers, right? This is about using money to get new subscribers. The money that you're spending is actually for the products that you have to give away. Some of the examples Noah used in here was a MacBook Air, right? I mean, that's, what is that, a $2,500 product? And this was written in 2015, I think. So he says right here that from this giveaway, he got 48,000 new subscribers with an $11,550 profit. And okay, that's the only example he had. So yeah, once again, I think this is very, very valid. And I think more people can take advantage of this opportunity than they realize. When I first read this, I thought, oh, this is cool, but I don't know how I would do it, right? Like I would never do that. It seems kind of gimmicky. You know, it seems like the $50 Walmart gift card in exchange for filling out this survey, right? But then I also thought to myself, there's a reason why that's been working for decades and decades and decades. It's just now, instead of people calling your home at dinner time trying to get you to fill out a survey to mail you a gift certificate, we're doing it through the internet. And regardless of how like people feel about it, I think if we're willing to get our egos out of the way and do something and do a little bit of an experiment, we could see a ton of success with this. I think Noah continues to do this till this day. And if you follow Noah's YouTube channel, half of his videos are like, I gave $10,000 away to an entrepreneur for something. So he's still doing this 10 years later and he's still crushing it.
For sure. Yeah. I think maybe it was last year he gave his Tesla away, like his personal car. Yeah. Yeah. Noah's a really interesting guy. I'm glad you started with him as a case study because he has a lot of very creative paid acquisition experiments that are worth taking a look at. And we'll get into another one of them in a second. When he was launching AppSumo, he also, I don't know if he talked about this on the show when he was here, but he bought a bunch of WordPress plugins, which is a form of paid acquisition, right? So his kind of thesis was you have all these WordPress plugins. The only people who are using them are obviously technical in like some way because they're running a website. You can kind of look at the data related to like how many downloads the plugin has and when the last time it was updated was, and get a feel for like what are the most popular plugins that are not being maintained by their owners anymore. And then he would just reach out to these owners and say, hey, I'll give you, I think he was paying like maybe it was either like a penny per user or 10 cents per user or something like that. And he would just buy the WordPress plugins and then use them to basically funnel traffic towards AppSumo and all the other software products that they offer, which is really creative. So he's an awesome example. What I would like to, let me take this up one level and talk about some unifying elements. Like what ties that strategy that you just shared together with the other thing that Noah tried and what a lot of people listening to this might go try if they do something like Facebook ads. For anybody who's been listening to this for the last couple of weeks, you know that Tim and I think it was last week, we talked about this sort of framework for growth and how there's like three levers that you can pull: time, money, audience. And the lever that you pull is basically determined by what resources you have. If you have no money and no audience, you're going to be doing these free growth tactics that like capitalize mostly on time. And as soon as you start to have some kind of runway, you can start to pull those like money levers or the audience lever. And each one of those, we mentioned this last week, each one of those buckets has sort of one underlying strategy that determines whether or not everything is really going to work. So for free, what we said last week was it doesn't really matter what the platform is or where you're sharing information, whether it's social media, TikTok, your blog, newsletter. If you're doing free promotion, your main goal is to get other people to tell your story. So you're really trying to develop things that people talk about, right? That's what the free acquisition is all about. And what I like about your example is that it builds on that, right? Because the next one, paid is about one thing. There's a lot of different ways to do paid acquisition, but at the end of the day, it's really about one thing, and that's something called your target cost per acquisition, target CPA. A lot of people might be familiar with this, but I'll break it down just in case anybody is new. Target cost per acquisition, this is how much do you want to pay to get a new subscriber, client, reader, whatever it is? How much do you want to pay? And you basically need to know this number in order to be certain that your paid advertising is working well, right? Because, I can go spend $500 per person to get a bunch of followers. Like I can just literally hand out $100 bills and people will click follow on Twitter. But unless their follow is turning into more than $100 for me down the line, I'm wasting my money, right? So people getting into paid acquisition, I think, should come to the table with this key understanding that this whole game, it really boils down to what is the target cost per acquisition that you're aiming for? And then it's a bunch of experiments to see, how you can dial that in, whether it's some kind of giveaway or ads on Facebook or something else. And so I'll pause in just a second, but before I do, I want to say that you can do this and kind of ballpark your estimates, right? So if you're brand new, it's possible to kind of guess how much your customers are going to be worth. And then you set a budget for how much you're willing to spend on ads, and then you spend it and kind of see if it works out. That's possible. And people with like lots of money to spend aren't really going to get hurt doing that. I think the people who get hurt jumping straight into paid ads are the ones who, they're kind of spending their entire budget, which you shouldn't be doing. And they're in a situation where like the ads are kind of a make or break. Like we really need this to work. If you really need it to work, don't spend the money. Go focus on like building a business. Totally right. Yeah. So I think just to lay some of the kind of the fundamentals, that is at the high level what this whole paid acquisition strategy is about. What's your target cost per acquisition, and can you hit it or not? And, ideally you have some concrete data to support what that target cost is, which means you're probably not coming out of the gate with paid ads. It's probably something that you're starting after whatever your business is has gotten a little traction. But you can, if you have a big enough budget, you can ballpark it and then just kind of guess and check. And that being said, I want to take us back into this example you just shared, which is like, and maybe kind of recap the example through this concept of paid of Noah's giveaway. So what he effectively did was say, I want to acquire, actually, what were the stats right here? So I think this was the laptop giveaway. Mm-hmm. Or I'm not sure if this is just the laptop or it might be all of them, but it said, let's see. Yeah. 25 giveaways in the past 4 years. He's done 528,238 total subscribers, 866,000 in revenue, and 442,000 in gross profit. So I don't know if these are the exact figures, but if we could say 442 is the profit on 866 in spend, then let's just say for the sake of example, he spent about $420,000 on these giveaways. That's a combination of, buying the prizes and also like advertising these giveaways, because he does post ads against the giveaways. So you spend $420,000 over the last several years to get 520,000 subscribers. So it's a little less than $1 per subscriber, right?
Yeah.
And now anybody who's listening can kind of see how that breaks down, right? What he's really doing is he's got this target acquisition price, maybe somewhere around, I mean, less than $1 is pretty good, but
That's really good. Yeah.
yeah, especially given what the lifetime value of like an AppSumo customer, I would bet is pretty high.
Pretty high.
But so let's say he's just targeting $1, right? And then he's targeting $1. He'll set aside a budget, like, I don't know, 50 grand or something like that. Try one of these experiments and then go back and see the data. Like, how many people did we get? How much did we spend? And what did we spend on each person? And that's really the process of paid acquisition. You're experimenting with a lot. You've got this target cost that you're trying to hit. And if you can hit it, this is kind of the key. Like, you've cracked a paid channel if you can acquire people at or below that target cost per acquisition. And if you can, this is kind of the magic moment. Like, if you can get people at or below your target acquisition price, there's really only two factors that limit your growth. One is going to be your overall budget, right? Like, how fast can you spend money? And I talked to Tyler Denk over at Morning Brew. Like, they when they were first growing, they like would stumble on these just killer ads that
and
just
spend as much as possible.
Yeah. And then it becomes, it's a matter of like, how fast can we get cash to just burn through and use this until it doesn't work anymore. And that's factor number two.
Yeah.
Factor number two, the law of shitty click-throughs means once you find something that works, it's going to work for a while. But once everybody figures out that it works, everyone does it and then it stops working. So that's the high level architecture of this whole paid thing. With that,
we should have started with this because it is so important to know. And I'll give an example of how somebody who is really, really just starting off that has like no experience can figure out what your target CPA is going to be. So let's imagine that you're listening to this and you have an idea for a membership site. And I'm just going to use membership site because that has monthly recurring revenue and I'm going to use even numbers like $10. So let's imagine you're going to charge $10 a month per customer. And for a membership site, typically, this really varies, but typically you can expect your members to stick around for 9 months. So just off the top of your head, and you want to know these numbers for sure, but off the top of your head, if you don't have any data, it's a relatively safe bet to say 9 months. So $10 a month for 9 months, $90. That's going to be like the lifetime value of a customer. So if you can get an email sign up for $1, and out of every 10 email signups you get, one of them turns into a customer, that means that you're spending $10 to acquire a customer. So that's a cost per acquisition. So your CPA is $10. And if your lifetime value of your customer is $90, that means you have an $80 margin on that $10 you spent. If those are your margins, then you are killing it. You are absolutely killing it. Like, obviously I'm using those numbers because I'm scared to do math in front of people. And so I want to keep my numbers really, really even. But like, really, here's the deal. And there's a lot of cases where even if you're completely breaking even on your CPA, it's still worth spending the money because the fact that you're building your group just makes the overall asset that you're developing more and more valuable. And in a lot of cases, it's even okay to lose money on your CPA. And that's a little bit different depending on like what your burn rate is and if you have funding coming in. I've never built a business on funding, so that would make me uncomfortable. I wouldn't know how to do that. But for me, if I'm making a 30% return, so let's say that I have a lifetime value of a customer of $100. Let's just say it's $10 a month and the average customer stays on for 10 months. So I'm making $100 per customer and it's costing me $70 to get an acquisition. So I'm making $30 per customer over the lifetime of their being a member. That would be worth it to me. I'd be good with those numbers. So unless you know what your CPA is, you're totally flying blind. And I've seen examples where it's like, hey, we're getting a ton of subscribers, we're getting a ton of email signups, and everybody's feeling good and they think that they're like really cruising on easy street. And then, Q3 comes around and you do the books and you're like, shit, we've been in the hole this entire time and we didn't know it.
Oh man. Yeah. And like we talked about this, I think maybe in December, you can have a huge list, but if they're not buying anything, you're just burning money on acquisition. That was a great example. I'm really glad you laid out those numbers. Do you have another case study that you want to go through?
Yeah. And this is going to be a little bit more of story time because this is a company I built 10 years ago. And so even before I give you the company, I'm going to say that the second paid acquisition that I would believe in, even though everybody kind of knows the term, I think that people don't appreciate the potential like sophistication of this enough. And that's influencer marketing. Leveraging so you said it so well again, and you repeated it a couple minutes ago, and you said it the other week or maybe the week before, where what you're doing is getting other people to tell your story. And paying people to do that is perfectly valid. The trick is, and this is really, really the important part, especially for people that are just beginning and they don't appreciate the value of like their dollars quite yet. The trick is to be on top of the measurement of your influencer marketing, because there's an 80-20 rule to influencer marketing. For whatever reason, certain people just have different audiences that are willing to spend money. And the majority of people with audiences don't actually buy anything. It's just a dopamine game of likes and retweets and like double taps and stuff. So here's how I did it. And I'm going to share my screen again. So this was a long time ago. Unfortunately, I can't find some of the people that I used to do it with, but this was my clothing company. And you know what? Let me open the actual homepage on a different window because I have the email collection pop down. And if I'm not like Andrew Chen, I'm not going to keep doing this pop down every 20 seconds.
These designs are sick, man. What was the deal behind this? You started this company for like, sober is sexy. Is this right when you were getting sober or what?
Well, this was a couple years into it. And actually the inspiration behind this was skateboarding. I've been a skateboarder my entire life. And when I was younger, skateboarding basically meant like you were getting chased by cops all the time. And then eventually Rob Dyrdek came around, and Rob Dyrdek like brought a brand to skateboarding. And now all of a sudden skateboarders wore a certain thing and we wore hats a certain way. And like, it was not just cool to be a skateboarder, but there was like a culture associated with skateboarding that wasn't just getting chased off of public parking lots by cops. Right. And so I was younger and a little bit more naive, and I thought I could take over the world. And so I was like, hey, if Rob Dyrdek can do it with skateboarding, I can probably do it with sobriety. And so I built this t-shirt company around sobriety. It was called New Life Clothing. It was a ton of fun. It's till this day, some of the most fun I ever had in entrepreneurship in my entire life. So the brand is New Life Clothing, NEWLYFE clothing.com. And it's just a Shopify store. And I would make these designs, and some of the designs kind of went viral, and, I got to feel really cool and I got recognized in public a couple of times. But really the success of it from the business completely came from Instagram. 100%. It came from Instagram and it came from email. And so what I would do is I would keep a spreadsheet of all the influencers that I sent money to. I would send people money through PayPal, and I would send them content that I wanted to post, or I would pay them extra money and send them a t-shirt if they actually took a picture of themselves wearing the article of clothing and then posted it, which was really way better, especially because Instagram is, like everybody's more attractive on Instagram with filters and stuff. So you can actually get them looking really good. It would be very effective. But so like I said, the trick is to track where your clicks are coming from. So I didn't even know UTM parameters back then. I was doing it off of dates. So I would just block out this week for this influencer, this week for this influencer, this week for this influencer. And I would make sure that they always sent the traffic to the homepage. I didn't send it to the actual product page that they were promoting, because for me, it wasn't about making a direct sale from the post. It was about collecting the email address and then putting that email address through my funnel, because I love funnels. And so this is the homepage of the website for people watching. But in this window, this is what the dropdown was. And so I would bait people into signing up by giving them 20% off their first order. This is pretty typical with e-commerce and even with some digital stuff. And, you know, I see some people getting like really, really high tech with their baits. And till this day, I think that's a waste of time. The best thing to do is give people money off and they'll take it, especially from like a copywriting perspective. If you position it as that they're saving money, right? Because there's like semantics here. The reality is that you're not actually saving money, you're spending money, right? You're just like, you have less money than you did an hour before, but the amount that you're spending is less. So if you phrase your copy into like them actually getting a benefit as opposed to them not losing quite as much, it'll work a lot better. All right, so get 20% off your order. When you would sign up for this email address, you would, and this is when I was still using MailChimp, and we got a good laugh before we started recording, because I found my original automation, which was in MailChimp, and like just looking at some of this is really, really funny. But so they would sign up. The first thing they would do is they would get their welcome to New Life Clothing. And in this email, there was their discount code. And again, because I was doing it week by week, I would change the discount code per week so that I could also pull reports and see how much revenue each discount code generated to get like a pretty ballpark idea of how much each influencer was generating for me. And then from that moment, I just wrote automations for, and you can see below that I deleted a ton of these, right? But all in all, when I really had this thing rocking, all in all, I think there was about 20 emails, because after 20 emails, people either weren't buying or they were just going to unsubscribe anyway. So it's like, there's no point in me writing automations for years, because if they're going to buy, they're going to buy, and I'm going to find out pretty quickly. And then each automation was the story behind the design. As a t-shirt company about recovery, like there was a lot of stories involved. And so even when people would buy shirts and then post selfies on Instagram, a lot of times in that post, they would tell their own story, right? And so like I would take all that content and I would use the story that they gave me as basically marketing bait. I shouldn't say bait, as marketing material. It wasn't bait in the same way. It was like, it was storytelling, and it was really great and it was powerful. And then this was my whole entire company. And at one point, like I said, this was some of the most fun I ever had. I was doing $600 a day in revenue. And me, for like a kid that built houses my whole life, I'm sitting here having the time of my life, shipping packages. You know, I used to write handwritten notes on all the poly bags of the packages, and people were tagging me on Instagram, and it was so much fun. Absolutely so much fun. Now, granted, I want to take a step back and say that this is an e-commerce brand. And so this was shipping physical products. I definitely think this would work just as well for digital products, for memberships, for courses. I mean, Jack Butcher is probably a perfect example of this. You know, Jack grew like his entire visualized value brand just by people mentioning him in Twitter. And he didn't even have to pay for any of that. He's just really, really, really good at that game. You know, he's really good at playing that game. But that's like a proof of concept right there, that you can still use money to get other people to tell your story. And for me, the differentiating factor is that when people would point that traffic back to me, I have a really, really effective email collection tool. And then those emails would go into a pretty lengthy autoresponder that would sell the product for me. And then from that point forward, like we talked about last week, then all I have to do is focus on making content. And so all of my time was spent on Instagram, just taking the best pictures possible and doing photo shoots and like learning how to edit images and all that stuff. And then it was that mechanism that really led to a lot of the success of this clothing company. And it was a ton of fun.
It's interesting to me that you mentioned the automations again, because last week when we were talking about SEO strategy, I asked you, like, we had laid out this great framework that Alex Garcia had shared. And I said, if you had to add one thing to this, what would you add? And you said automations. And it seems like automations have been a really big part of scaling the different businesses that you've built. So maybe we'll have to do like a full deep dive on how you structure and write automations and stuff like that, because I think that could be really interesting ground to cover. But it's interesting to me that same concept was so crucial across all the different types of marketing that you did. So that is important for people to know. And I think just to tie that example back in with some of the framework stuff we were talking about, so people listening, I hope this is starting to click. It's like, if you're going to offer a discount code, that becomes easier when you understand the lifetime value of the clients that you're catching and what the cost is that you can pay to acquire them, right? Because while they may not, technically be saving money because they're spending money, you are technically spending money to get them by giving them that discount code because it's coming off the top of whatever they would normally buy. So you need to kind of understand those numbers, and there's a lot of guess and check that goes into that. Ditto for if you're paying influencers, right? That's part of that target CPA. Yeah. Or if you're using this exact same funnel strategy, but driving it with ads, like typical Facebook ads.
Yeah.
I hope that's coming through. It's like, it's all the same, right? It's this concept of how much can you pay? And then you're going off into the wilderness and just trying to figure out like the most effective ways to do that. And I wanted to say, this is kind of how this looks day to day, right? I think there's a temptation, I've certainly felt it, to kind of get everything perfect before you put anything in play. And I've been lucky enough to interview a handful of just like really effective operators and growth marketers. And even with them, they certainly know quite a bit more than you or I do, but the process is largely experimental. So they they'll sit down each day, and here's a quick story from The Hustle. This is the way our head of growth put it to me. Early on, The Hustle kind of stumbled upon this really effective ad. It was called The Cold Man, or internally we called it The Cold Man. And it was because it was, an ad and had a picture of a guy with like a winter hat on and some text over it. But it just, for whatever reason, it just worked like crazy. Like the CPMs fell through the floor, and the cost per acquisition fell through the floor. And it was a very high performing ad. And so the game inside the team for the rest of the next several years was always beat Cold Man, right? And every day people showed up with the goal of beating the best performing ad they had found so far. So it's not like you ever get to a point where you're just like done and paid acquisition is just working for you. It's this ongoing iterative process where you're constantly learning and trying to beat whatever your best performing channel is so far. And related to that, the last thing I'll just say about channels is, because I think I like this. I'm glad we actually started with some of the less common acquisition channels.
Yeah.
The most common one that people probably think of is Facebook, right? And there's a reason for that. It used to be that Facebook was really inexpensive, right? It was like the cheapest way to drive traffic. Today, that's not true anymore. It is like very expensive.
It's probably TikTok, right?
I think for cost, a lot of people are saying, TikTok is where the fertile opportunity is. But a lot of people still start with Facebook. And the reason is they have the best audience segmentation on the market. So the kind of strategy that's often used today is when you're launching something new, you set aside budget on Facebook, realizing, as Tim mentioned, you might actually lose money acquiring these particular readers, but you're going to figure out who your audience really is. And then Facebook is going to give you a whole 3D look at who that audience is. and then you can replicate it elsewhere and hopefully make up the difference. So just wanted to give that as a quick note to people. If you're looking for like, where do I start? Facebook is still kind of the go-to for like your standard ad programs. Okay, can we wait? Do you have anything else to say about this?
No, I was stretching. You're good.
Oh, okay. Let's close it off like this, because I think this has been really useful. I want to close this segment with a couple of tools. We've offered a framework, right? This is the underlying framework behind advertising, cost per acquisition.
Yeah.
And I think Tim and I have both written more about this extensively. So like if you look us up on Twitter, I actually shared a worksheet that you can use if you're building a newsletter. Specifically, it's like a calculator to do this for you, figure out what your cost per acquisition is. But there's a lot of information out there. If you know that that's what you have to figure out, you're simplifying things a little bit. So that's the framework, cost per acquisition. We've shared a couple impressive and maybe counterintuitive campaigns that have been cool to see that you should definitely check out. I want to close by giving people a couple of tools that you can use to continue finding cool examples and like developing new ideas for yourself. Because as we've said several times here, this keeps changing. Today it's TikTok, 5 years from now, you have no idea what it's going to be. So how do you go about kind of spying on different companies and figuring out what their acquisition strategy is? There's a couple of really useful steps. I'm going to share my screen and I'll talk through it.
Oh yeah, hold on. I got to give you ownership. And while I'm giving you ownership, since we're repeating for the 10th time, seriously, don't spend money until you have a basic understanding of what your CPA is. Like if you walk away from one thing with this, walk away from that, because if you have your CPA, you can work backwards. You can go like, okay, this is what I need to hit. How do I go backwards to get there? So don't listen to this and be like, hey, Tim and Ethan said I got to start advertising. Like, no, know what you need to get to first and then work backwards from there.
So once you have this idea of what your cost per acquisition is or what you want it to be, what's the next step? I'm going to walk you through it real quick for everybody who's listening. One of the most important tools, this is crazy that they make this available, but it's like the Facebook ad library.
Dude, I thought the same thing.
Yeah,
I cannot believe that this is a public tool. Seriously, I built an entire ad network off of Facebook from the ads that you guys built with Elon Musk, where you had that whole ad thing with Elon Musk with like the black and white type picture. I used that whole entire thing and stole basically 80% of the copy from it. And the whole time I was thinking, I cannot believe that I can just spy on other people's ads.
Yeah, it's insane. I'm glad to hear that it was useful. And that's exactly what this is. So for everybody listening, Facebook or Meta now has an ad library. And you just Google it, Facebook ad library. And basically what you do, you come here and you can literally, almost like Google, type in the name of any company that you want to look at, and it'll show you all of the ads they're currently running for their business. So Tim, we wanted to do this live. We're going to do two things. We're going to like break down an ad flow, like super quick, and then also just kind of comment on things people could replicate. So throw one at me, something that's, I don't know, like what's a media company that's not the hustle that you admire that we should break down?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say a media company, since the first one that comes to mind, because I used to spy on these guys all the time when I was doing my ads for New Life Clothing. Nasty Gal, Nastygal, Sophia Amoroso's company. They just had such a cool brand, and the way that they were running ads, I thought was so impressive. So it's not a media company, but the point is still the same. This is a company that I used to do this for a lot when I was creating ads for Instagram.
Awesome. Okay, that works. So I'm going to type in Nasty Gal. Instantly, it pulls up all of the ads that Nasty Gal is running. And you can see a couple of things. So first of all, you can see like when the ad launched, which is really cool because at least theoretically, ads that have been running longer are probably still performing pretty well. So you can use that as kind of a little cheat code for figuring out what's working best. The other thing you can see obviously is like the ad creative. So you can see, what images, text seem to be working well. These are all pretty similar. It's like an attractive woman kind of wearing, I guess, is Nasty Gal, is it mostly lingerie or is it like everything?
And like the first thing that comes to mind these days is like, wow, it's tougher and tougher to get clicks, because the reason why I really, really liked Nasty Gal is because they had this cool, like super edgy, like 1970s sort of vibe. And they had all these fluorescent colors in the background with their images. And now, I mean, for people listening, it's not offensive at all, but it's basically just half naked people. So like they're really after the clicks.
Yeah. So that is interesting how you can kind of observe like the changes in the ad market.
Definitely.
You'll know it's getting real bad when like this is what's going on in New York Times or something like that.
Yeah.
So you can see the ad creative. And in this case, like a lot of the creative is kind of the same. Sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's not. But another thing you can do, this is what's also crazy to me, is like if you click one of these, it takes you straight through to the landing page that they've set up. So you can literally step by step move through someone's funnel and try. And if you're paying attention, you can reverse engineer exactly what they're doing. Okay. So in this case, and by the way, at a high level, there's kind of two ideas, at least for growing like a content business. This might change for.
Okay. Well, you know what? Product. Since I hate to cut you off, but let's try section 4. Try Galloway's company. He's got like an online media education company that I know that he just raised a bunch of money on.
Okay.
I think he got like a $30 million round or something. Section 4.
Is it FOUR or?
No, but I don't think there's a space. I think it's just section 4. Hold on, let me find it.
And it's worth noting, some companies, surprisingly, are not advertising on Facebook.
He's advertising. I'm looking at an ad right now, actually. Section 4 News. That's the name of the actual page. Section 4 News. I'll send it to you.
Can you spell it for me?
Yeah, hold on. I'll just put it in the chat.
Let's see. Yeah, it's Section 4 News. That's interesting. So it's not coming up. But I want to
this out. Let me find another one. We can edit that stuff out. I really didn't expect fucking.
Oh, it is coming up.
Half naked chicks to show up.
Is this? No, it's Dr. Livingwood. So let's do one I know. Like we'll do Motley Fool. So because Motley Fool tests a ton of ads, and we'll just walk through this live. But what I was getting at, it really doesn't matter whether it's a media company or something else. At a high level, there's kind of like two schools of thought around where to drive people when you're advertising. So on the one hand, like you'll see a lot of people drive traffic straight to a squeeze page, which is like where you're trying to capture their information. And this is kind of what you were talking about, Tim. Or like, for people listening, when Tim said the most important thing for me was actually getting their email address, not like making a direct sale.
Yeah.
That's a squeeze page type strategy. You're not really trying to sell the product immediately. You're just trying to capture their information. And so if you look at somebody like, I don't know, I mean, The Hustle is a good example of this. Like the homepage of The Hustle lets you do one thing, and that's put in your email,
Yeah.
That's a squeeze page. The other tactic that is widely used is to drive people straight to some useful piece of content.
Yeah.
And so as we break this down, the reason I mentioned those two up front is because as we break them down, you'll probably see one or the other being used. But let's do this pretty quick. I don't want to belabor the point. We're looking here for everybody listening at the ads that Motley Fool is running. And this is interesting again, because you can see all the creative. You can see how long it's been running. The farther you scroll, you can start to see, I mean, I'm looking at maybe 10, 12, more than a dozen different versions of what look like almost the exact same ad with just very small tweaks in the written copy. And so you can, by doing this, you get a window into their kind of experimental consciousness. And what are they trying to do? What are they testing? It's just very useful in that way. Now, if you click any one of these, like I said, you're going to be stepped right into their funnel. So in this case, I just clicked a random ad. comes straight to an article.
That's just to a piece of content.
Yep. And I'll bet you
Wow.
dollars to donuts, like either halfway down or at the bottom of this, there's going to be some kind of call to action that's going to pull us further into the funnel, right? So right now, this is like an all-in stock order. Boom, right at the bottom. Do you know which? Okay, so do you know which stock we're talking about? So I haven't read it, but I can almost guarantee this entire article is going to be about, historically,
this
there's always
one stock
opportunities that
did blah, blah, blah.
you don't want to miss this. And yeah.
Uh-huh.
So they're just building you up. And then at the very bottom, it's like, hey, do you know what we're talking about? Okay, so that's an interesting lesson. You can take that and copy it. Then you click.
That's so
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah. And so this is, we could spend an entire episode just going through like one content funnel like this, but you're going to see that the Facebook ad library allows you to spy on creative and to walk through somebody's funnel, and sort of it's a shortcut if you're trying to develop things, especially if you have brands that you really admire, so that's a cool tool. One other one that I like a lot, this is worth mentioning for anybody who doesn't know it, is SimilarWeb. So similarweb.com, if you just type in, so fool.com, it's going to show us a breakdown of their traffic. And specifically, what I think is really useful is, oh, wow, they changed their layout. But it shows you how much of their traffic comes from different sources. So here it says,
wow,
for Motley Fool, 53% of their traffic is from search, 18% is referral, 24% is direct. And then it says that only like 0.13% of
yeah, but it's probably referral. It's probably,
you think so?
The ads are probably being counted as referral traffic.
That would make sense, just given the like number of ads that they're testing right now. It's got to be a large portion of their budget. Anyways, this is a really useful tool for seeing, because sometimes you'll look and you'll find companies that aren't spending on Facebook or Google or anything like that, and then that's kind of a hint in and of its own right, and to look somewhere else to figure out how it is they're bringing in traffic. So those are a couple of the tools that I use every week just over at Trends to kind of like reverse engineer how someone's growing a business. And then is there one more? Oh, one more I'll share real quick and I'm sure, Tim, do you use BuiltWith at all?
No, never heard of it.
Okay, so this is the third one. I'll share my screen again for.
But this is the kind of stuff I love doing these with you, man, because you approach this with like such a different mindset as me. Even watching this as I'm looking at Motley Fool, I'm just at the point where we're starting to thinking about running ads for Copyblogger. And in my mind, I already have the whole thing built out, because I'm just going to send it to downloads, basically. Like I'll give away free courses or something, and I know that'll work, but I never in a million years even thought about sending it directly to a blog post. And then even more interestingly is on Motley Fool, you think, okay, so for people listening that can't see the video, at the bottom of the Motley Fool article, there was two little buttons that said, do you know what stock we're talking about? No or yes. And then no matter what you hit, the same email address is going to pop up. But what that does is it creates one more step to basically weed out the people that aren't going to take that extra little bit of attention. Really, it's not even necessarily about the action. It's about like the cognitive awareness that they know what it is that they're signing up for. And that one little extra click is going to keep their data so much cleaner, an incredible amount of differentiation between people that just sign up because it's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll give this a try, and people that sign up because they actually paid attention. They were like, yeah, I'm into this. And like, I never, ever would have thought of that. And so this is why having you on is so cool, man, because you just, all these tricks that I never even think of.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks, man. That's awesome to hear. And it's a lot of fun. I nerd out on this stuff. And I think maybe some people listening to this will too. And like, you can take this as far as you want. So you put in your email address and you're going to start getting whatever their email drip campaign is, right? Because as soon as you do that, you're on their marketing list. And so if you're selling a product that's similar, or if you just like the way that their business is built, go sign up and see like, what is the first email that they send? And what are they like deconstructed? What are they trying to do? Because what they're going to do is they're going to link you. these really well-established companies, they don't send anything by accident, right? Like
Yeah.
they're sending you dialed in marketing to move you towards a purchase. And so you read that first email, the copy is going to be on point, and whatever they link off to, it's not going to be for fun or like by mistake. They're going to send you to the next spot in the funnel. So it's a really great way of just like saving time and also kind of like upping your chops if you're writing your first funnels or something like that. I'm glad you like this. I want to share that last tool, which is Built With.
Yeah, we got one more example.
So-
Built With.
Yeah, this is and there's a free and a paid version. The free version, I think, lets you do like as many basic searches as you want per day, and then you can do one advanced search. Basically, what you do is you type in any URL, and it's crawled, millions and millions of websites, and it just breaks down the tools and software installed on that website. So whatever they're using, like right here, so everybody who's listening, it basically breaks the website down into the analytics and tracking tools that they're using. Let's see, widgets. So that's things like font plugins or tag managers, different language things, e-commerce tools, different web frameworks that they might be using, their content delivery, like all kinds of stuff. So it's telling you exactly what technology is running their website. And the reason this is cool, hey, they're HubSpot customers. The reason this is cool is because you can see a couple of things. First, if you're brand new to the game and you're trying to figure out like how to get started, you can see the major tools that they're using to make the business work. Like, what is their website built on? What is their content management system? What's their client management system? And then what are the analytics? What are they using for email? You can pull all that stuff from here. And like a lot of the time it's just going to be WordPress, right? People are just building on WordPress, but you can see what they're using. So the other reason this is cool is if you go into the detailed technological profile and look at like the analytics and tracking, you can start to break these down and you'll see things like Google Tag, Facebook Domain Insights, Facebook Pixel. And if you start looking for the different pixels that they have installed, you can see where they're advertising. And this is, I don't know, it's sort of helpful. I think it's more helpful for like niche websites. Somebody as big as The Fool is going to just be advertising everywhere probably. But for like niche industry websites, you'll often see, maybe they're not advertising on Facebook, or maybe they are, and they also have all these small ad networks that they're also using. And it just can help you kind of kick the tires and get ideas for where you might want to place ads. So this is a cool tool as well if you're trying to deconstruct like what somebody else is doing. So those are the three: the ad library, SimilarWeb, and Built With. All very useful if you're doing this kind of thing.
The ad library, especially, I think that really just blew my mind. Even when you're halfway through with Built With, I was like, oh my God, I'm still in my head about the ad library. So I had to like re-engage and refocus. I love it. Yeah, I love it. I think we should, we covered so much. All right, so let's recap. No matter how you're spending money, know your CPA. If you're just getting started and it's impossible for you to know your CPA, you can even do a little bit of research. You can Google like, what is the average CPA for such and such industry? Have a baseline. Have a target that you're aiming for. Without a target, you're walking blind. The conversions can differ, and I want to make sure that I'm not painting like my biases on it, because there's plenty of companies that wouldn't send paid traffic to an email list. They would just go directly for the sale. I personally think that sending it to an email list is the best route because you just have the most options, and that's because I love writing funnels. But there's plenty of other people out here that have great advice on the topic as well. And then finally, some tools that you can look at to get started are Facebook Ad Finder, was it?
Ad library.
Ad library.
Yep.
Build With, and then what was the third one?
SimilarWeb will break down their
SimilarWeb,
traffic for you.
Nice. I think next week we got to talk about funnels.
Yeah, or we can also, we can talk about automations and then how like audience builds that. It's that third bucket. You know, we've done free, we've done paid.
Yeah.
Now, what happens with the audience?
Yeah.
And yeah, how do you maybe we'll take people deeper into how these funnels are constructed. So if you like this, be sure to let us know. Actually, before we can't leave yet, because there are some thanks are in order. We had a couple of people say some very nice things to us on Twitter. Just wanted to call them out. So Monique Walhoff, thank you for the kind words about the podcast. Monique's, I think, over in Portugal. She does strategic marketing over in Portugal. So if anybody's relocating to Portugal for be sure to check out Monique Obrigado. Luke Adler shared the pod recently too. Thank you, Luke.
I saw that, Luke. Yeah, thank you very much for the kind words.
That, man. Luke's got he and I've been chatting on Twitter for a while. He's got a couple really cool side projects. The one that I'm like into is called Vacation Victory. And it's like, you know how you and I talked about local media as like the big opportunity?
Yeah.
His are like super niche travel guides for locations that you probably wouldn't have thought of before. So Luke, thanks a lot, man. And then Danielle Ruff. And I want to read Danielle's because I got a little choked up.
Yeah, right. It made me feel like, wow, people do listen to this and like we are making a difference.
Yeah. She said Tuesday's podcast had me at the intro music. Good job. So shout out to our editor.
I love it.
Shout out to the editor. And then the information given, invaluable with the potential to be life-changing for those ready for application. Danielle, thanks. Like this.
Thank you.
Yeah, this really makes a difference to hear this stuff. So love all you guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for shouting us out and letting us know that you hear this and that it's useful. Let us know what you think of this episode. And what you want to hear next. I mean, we're here just to try and do something that's useful. So, Tim, you got anything else to say?
Like and share the pod. It's the best thing you can do to support the show. We don't ask for anything. If you got some value out of this, just tell a friend. And if you could do that, that would mean the world to us. So thank you, everyone, for listening. We hope you love it. And we'll talk to you next week.